In the first episode of our Suzuki GSXR 750 project, after removing the race exhaust system, we scoured the internet and found an eBay bargain standard exhaust system in a bid to gain more power and pass track day noise testing. Madness, you say, but in this episode, we'll reveal whether our calculated risk paid off. So last month, in the first episode of the GSXR 750 project series, I kind of feel like we put ourselves out there a little bit by claiming that we could get more performance and more power by removing the racing exhaust system that was on the bike and swapping it with a stock exhaust system with catalytic converter included, without knowing the results. Well, 600 mile in a van later and 2 days off work, I can confirm that we made the right decision. Let me take you into the results and explain what happened. Okay, so you can see this is the dyno chart from my 2 visits to Jordan Bike's tuning center, and you can see 3 lines on it basically. The first line, which is the bottom line, that was when I took the bike first in. That was when it had the full exhaust and the baffle in, which I needed to run in order to pass the noise testing. And you can see what I was complaining about. That was at 107 horsepower. Then the second line, the blue line, is when I had it remapped with the baffle in place, still the full system at that point. And then the third line, which I'm really happy to report, is the one after I've refitted the full standard exhaust with catalytic converter in place. And you can see the performance is significantly higher, and we're performing at 131 horsepower at the rear wheel. Gains right at the top, right the way through the rev range. It's quite impressive. Actually, the difference between the last time the only times that I've ridden this bike on track, from 107 up to 131, that's a 24 horsepower difference, which is just massive. And I think taking the Gixxer back on track with this new setup, with this new exhaust, and with this new remap is going to be significant. In fact, we see with the original performance, it was actually flatlining at around just after 11,000 revs, really wheezing out, and I could tell that the bike was very lethargic in comparison to how it should be. Now going back on the track, not only am I going to have another sort of best part of 15 horsepower at that point, I've then got another 11 to go until max power, which is around sort of 13,500 revs. So that's going to spit me down the track so much faster, and I'm really excited for it. So not only is it peak power, but it's been right through the mid-range as well. From 6,000, we've got quite a big difference between where it was and where it is now. Right up through the rev range, 10,000, you know, we've got quite a big difference, at least 10, 11, 12 horsepower there. And the only area where there's a very small loss is around 4,000 RPM. And in the last video I talked about reinstalling the SET valve, which is like the X-up valve. Unfortunately, when we got it to the dyno center, and we did just think the technician had disconnected it at the last session, but actually it turned out the previous owners actually snipped the wires for the power to the servo motor, and in effect I can't get it working again unless I was to like replace the wiring loom, which I'm just not prepared to do. You know, we've disconnected that now, we've taken it out, but there is a tiny little bit where he couldn't quite get the fuel in, you know, on this perfect straight line, and there's a tiny dip there. Perhaps the servo or having the SET valve would have enabled that to be a bit more flat there, but you know, we're talking real small change here. You know, proof of the pudding is in the eating, and you can see here that we've got a fantastic performance, and I'm super excited for the results, and super happy with what we've done. So as you can see, the results are absolutely fantastic, and I literally couldn't be any happier. I've now got a bike that performs absolutely top whack, and it's controlling the noise. I never need to worry about sound testing, no matter what track day I'm going on, whether it's a quiet day or whether it's a loud day. It's just not even important anymore to me and this motorcycle. And it's performing at another 24 horsepower than what I had when I last took it on track. I think that's going to make the bike a lot faster, and I really can't wait to get out and have a bit of a shakedown with it. Yes, I've added 5 kilos to the weight of the bike, but I've gained more or less 25 horsepower. What the race system would have been on the GSXR without the baffle in place, well, I don't know. We didn't get it dynoed without baffle in place, and actually, so it's impossible to tell you what that would have been, but it's also irrelevant because I couldn't have ridden on usual track days with that in place. I'd have had to baffle it. So it was the only real way to compare the two. And obviously you can see it's a significant difference. Now, you look on the internet and for GSXR 750s and dyno performance and stuff, and this bike is now performing top level. I mean, you might get one that's 1 or 2 horsepower more than this one with a full race exhaust, but generally speaking, this is right at the top, unless other than bikes that have had like internals done, like race cams or polish and pour, or other internal racing work done. But as a stock bike, this is performing absolutely top whack. I'm really happy about that. In terms of the 5 kilos weight gain, I'm going to come on to that in a little while. Now, the first time that I went to Jordan Bikes to get this bike remapped, I was with my son, and to be honest with you, we were just messing around a lot of the time, so I didn't pay too much attention to what was actually going on with the bike. Second time, I was with Jeff, and you know, we were watching, we were taking real interest in what was going on, and I have to say, it's a phenomenally impressive thing that they do with these motorbikes in terms of remapping and the work that the guys at Jordan Bikes do. Now, when you look on the internet and you search like remap, or you search up dyno for bikes and stuff like that, all that they seem to be interested in is that headline figure and did it make more power or not. But actually, when you're there, probably the majority of the time, or yeah, a massive proportion of the time, is not involved in absolute peak power, but it's the performance of the bike throughout the rev range, and 20% throttle, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100% throttle, and how the whole bike is fueled throughout those parameters, you know. So how does it, it's not just about what does it do at absolute full throttle, but how does it perform at 40% throttle? Does it chug? And how do we get around that? So basically, not only does it maximize the performance, but it improves significantly the way the bike fuels throughout the rev range and gets rid of all that snatchiness. So having gone through this experience twice now, I'd thoroughly recommend remapping for your motorcycle. So having ridden the bike quite a few times now, all of a sudden it's feeling like the bike that it always should have done. And it's way better than I've ever experienced this motorcycle. It's got loads of power at the top end, it's got much more torque, and honestly, it's just super eager throughout the rev range. I'm really happy with it. And the way that the bike fuels as well, on and off the throttle in all gears, is just lovely. That is going to feel lovely coming out of corners and getting back on the throttle again, really smooth and ready to go. And the power output and performance of this specific motorcycle, I'm not ever going to want to revisit again, because I'm happy with it. And if a year, 2 years down the line I want a more powerful bike, I'll chop it in for a thou. I don't need to revisit the power on this because I'm very happy with it. And I have to say, I'm also really enjoying riding with a quieter exhaust. Now, like the next guy, I do enjoy a loud exhaust. There's nothing like when you turn that bike on and you've got a loud exhaust and it's just like, it's in your face, it's loud, and it's pop, 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 pop. You know, it's really good. But, you know, it's a bit of a change. And I've ridden with a full system exhaust for the last couple of years, so, you know, I kind of know what goes hand in hand with them too. And some of that is like unwanted attention. You know, you go down the high street and everybody turns around to see what the hell's coming down the street. Well, I'm not getting that anymore, and I don't also need to worry about starting it up in the morning and waking my neighbours up. And also when I'm doing like ride outs and stuff later on this summer, you know, I know that following a bike like mine, that when it had the full system, it's a real drone, just parp the whole time, you know, when you're following it. So it'll be a nicer experience to go out in a group ride as well with this quieter exhaust. Okay, so lessons we feel that we've learned as a part of this whole process about motorcycle performance. First one is be careful what you wish for. And we wouldn't advise fitting a racing exhaust system unless you're going racing. Now, it's dead easy to come to like a keyboard warrior opinion about this, and if you've been looking on forums and stuff, but honestly, let me tell you, I mean, we've put the mileage in, we've done the work, we've spent the money, and we've wore the blooming t-shirt, and the results are what they are. Now, fitting a full system to your full system exhaust to your bike, so if we fit one again to this, you know, what we're going to get, like another couple of horsepower. But there's other things that go on with that. We would need to remap the bike again. So you put one of these systems on, you've changed the fueling. You will have to go and get it remapped to get those performance out of it. The other thing that you're going to have to do is, if you ride on UK track days, you will have to baffle it at some point because it will be too loud. And in that status that you've put a baffle in your exhaust in order to quieten it down, you're going to lose pretty much all the gains that you made, and if not, you'll be in a deficit like we were to the tune of 25 horsepower, and obviously that's not very good. Now, reference weight, obviously by adding the standard exhaust we've gained 5 kilos, and if you're really dogged about losing that 5 kilos, I've actually come up with a bit of a list for how you could do that, starting with the cheapest and easiest and then going down somewhat. So the first way you could lose weight is ourselves, you know, and actually, you know, I'm just saying it how it is, you know, and if I was getting into competitive racing and going for faster lap times in that last second, that last couple of seconds, I'd be looking at the bike, but I'd also be looking at me as well. I would be wanting to lose 10 kilos. There's 10 kilos of weight extra on me that I'd be wanting to drop if I was really, really serious about doing it. And maybe that offends some people, but you know, anybody at the top of their game or anyone that's really serious about racing is also fit and they're light as well, because they know that whatever weight, whether it's the bike or their body, contributes to the whole package. So that is probably, well, that's free, and it's probably the easiest thing to do as well. Maybe not the easiest, but it's free. Second thing that we would do is remove the mirrors. Now, we actually weighed them. They weigh 1.1 kilos. So take the mirrors off, you've saved a kilo, dead easy. Another thing, because the servo motor on this didn't work anymore, we've actually removed it. So the servo motor and the wiring, that weighed half a kilo. Fourth thing that you could do, and this is really, really surprising, I didn't know this until I've looked into it, but if I change my standard battery, my standard UASA battery, into a lithium one, I can save 3 kilos. Because the standard battery weighs 4 kilos and a lithium one is like 900 grams. So that's a 3 kilo saving, and it's about 100 pounds. That's a massive, massive weight saving. Already, for 100 quid and a bit of working out, I've saved you way more than the added weight for the standard exhaust. And the last way that you could save weight is to fit race fairings to your motorcycle. Now, the only reason that I haven't done this is because I can't be bothered, because this bike's going to be ridden on the road and the track. I don't really want to be taking the fairings fully off and then putting them back on again. But when we took the front end of the bike off to get the suspension done, and you know, some of the other bits that we've had to take off, actually the front fairing with all the lights in it and stuff, they're quite heavy, and you know, race fairings are significantly lighter. I reckon there's at least 5 kilos by taking the fairings off on the front and changing the seat unit and get rid of the lights and the registration plate and all that sort of stuff. I think there's easy 5 to 8 kilos. So look, among all those ideas, there's easy 8 to 10 kilos, way more than enough to pay for that. And actually they're quite cheap and they're quite easy to do as well. So second thing that we've learned is that the standard exhausts that come on these motorcycles are actually bloody good. And they've been designed by the people that made the bike, that create the engine in order to maximize the performance. Yes, they've made them with noise testing in mind, and yes, with some emission stuff in mind, but actually they're pretty good. And you know what? They're hard to beat as well. And yes, with a full $2,000 Akrapovic system, they might be able to beat it in terms of outright top-end power, but they're not going to be able to control the noise in the same way. And unless you've got the right regulations that you're operating in, either in your racing or your track days, they're really hard to beat actually. So the third thing that we've learned is that remapping your motorcycle is really successful. And that is probably where the majority of your performance gains are going to come from. Unless you're going to go into the engine and do some other work like the cams, the polish and port and stuff like that. If you're going to want a standard bike and run a standard exhaust, that is where the majority of your performance gains are going to come from. And even though we've got a standard exhaust, well, we've shown there's loads of room for potential improvement, and it also improves the way that the bike rides and runs and fuels throughout the rev range. Now, if you've got a brand new bike, that may invalidate some of your warranty. You'd have to check out with your specific bike and manufacturer. But if your bike is outside of the warranty, I don't think there's anything to lose. And I think, you know, you're just getting great performance gains actually. So totally recommend remapping, and really, really recommend Jordan bikes too. They do a great job. So really hope you've enjoyed this one, hope you've learned something. We certainly have. Please like, please subscribe, check out the Knox range, and we'll see you next time.